Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I'd like to show you how I made this card. I got some inspiration by watching, I think her name is Amanda. She's a UK demonstrator, and I'll think of it. She goes by the name of Scrimpin' Mommy in the UK, and I was watching a very old video that she did a couple years ago, and it gave me inspiration for this card. What I've done is I used some of the celebration paper. I put this on a white card base, 8.5 by 5.5 scored and folded at 4 1/4, and then I used a piece of the Glimmer Paper from the Celebration package of Glimmer Paper that you can get. And I cut that one at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then I cut a piece of vellum, and my vellum is 3 3/4 by 5, and then you need a piece of scrap of the Whisper White to do your sentiment and to cut out your big dragonfly. And so I used, let's see, the Dragonfly stamp set. And the stamp set is called Dragonfly Dreams. And I used this stamp out of the stamp set. And then for my sentiment, I used from the Beautiful You stamp set, which is a 2-package stamp set, I used Celebrate down here in the corner. And then I used the dies, and I used the largest of the Dragonfly dies here to cut out this particular piece. And you'll need also another scrap of vellum, because I cut a vellum butterfly or dragonfly that is underneath here. It doesn't show probably very much on camera, but in real life it does show as kind of another layer under this. And I'm going to change a few things. I like the sentiment down here, but it kind of felt a bit crowded, so I'm going to move the dragonfly up and a little bit more of an angle across the top of the card. And in the inside, I just sponged the area blue, and I double stamped the dragonfly in both Bermuda Bay and Pear Pizzazz. And so that's the elements that I'm using. And so let's just go ahead and get started. And I'm going to bring up some scratch paper here. We need a pretty good sized piece of scratch paper. And I'm going to do a lot of my work on this vellum panel. And the inks that I'm using, I am using Bermuda Bay, I'm using Pear Pizzazz, and I'm using Tempting Turquoise. And what I'm doing is a process of sponging on this vellum. And then I'm sponging also the dragonfly and the sentiment. So lots of sponging today. So I'll open up my ink pads, and then I've got some sponges here ready to go for the various ink pads, and I'll put those on there so I don't get lost here. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is start with the Pear Pizzazz. So I'm going to come up again along the edges, and I am going to sponge this Pear Pizzazz because I wanted kind of a light color around the edge. And when Amanda did her card, she didn't use vellum, she used cardstock, but I thought it would be very pretty with the using the vellum instead of cardstock here, because it's so translucent, you get a really different kind of effect. But you can see you have to be a little careful with the vellum because it's definitely not cardstock, and it's a lot more delicate. Okay, so I'm finished with my sponging, I think, pretty much of the green. Then I'm going to move on to the Bermuda Bay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just catch the edges of this piece of vellum and get a little of the hint of that Bermuda Bay all the way around the edge of this card. Then I'm going to use my sponge just inside the green and blending into the green here with the Bermuda Bay. And I don't want it real heavy, but I do want to see that there's a gradation in color coming here to the Bermuda Bay. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Tempting Turquoise by putting just a touch of the Tempting Turquoise in a few spots around the edge of the card, right in the corners. And again, not completely covering, and then I'm going to put some color right in the center of this piece of vellum. And so there, and I think you can see that. Let me put a piece of white behind that. So I've got the green and the Bermuda Bay and then more of the turquoise here in the center. And it just makes the vellum look kind of wispy, and I like that kind of a look. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I've already cut my pieces out, so I have a piece of white cardstock and a piece of vellum cut in the shape of the dragonfly. And what I'm going to do is take the Bermuda Bay here, and I am going to sponge as though this were a template, and I'm going to sponge the Bermuda Bay right around the wings of this dragonfly in the corner. And this is a place where I would say don't be afraid to use a little bit of elbow grease, although you have to be careful not to tear your piece. And I would say brush away from the body rather than towards the body so you don't catch the ends. And that seemed to be the trick that made this work a little bit better. And I'm really just trying to get a hint or an edge of that here and there. You can see I've got just the wisp of a pair of wings there. And I'm going to do that again up here, and I'm going to capture a little bit of the body of our dragonfly here. And yes, I'm getting the image that I want. And this isn't very scientific. I am just holding this down and sponging on and around. And again, the motion mostly away from the body so that I don't crimp the wings of my dragonfly, because I'm going to use this dragonfly later. And let's see what we've got here. There we go. We've got the hint once again of the dragonfly wings there, just ever so slightly in that area. I'm going to put one more image up here. And I think I'll just come in with a couple of wings again, but maybe more down into the page here, and see if I can't get some more of that faint image like this was a stencil. And then the body itself here. And again, away from the body towards the other set of wings. And there we've got another faint image of the dragonfly there. Isn't that pretty? I think it came out just lovely. Now I'm going to finish sponging my actual dragonfly here because I want him completely sponged to be prepared to put him on the card. And again, the first time I did this, I had this piece all crimped and bent, and so I learned that the smart thing to do is to sponge and do that away from the body to get the kind of coverage I want. Then I went over him again in the green. And you see what starts to happen is you get a little bit of a different color because, oops, there it goes, because you're mixing the green with the Bermuda Bay. And I love the color combination. Not quite either color, and yet very attractive. Okay, I'm going to straighten out my tail here and set this guy aside. Now I'm going to do a little sponging also on this Vellum dragonfly. And in this case, I'm going to start with the green and then I'm going to touch up this dragonfly with the tempting turquoise. You know, the dragonfly wings that you see are kind of that greenish blue look, and that's what I was trying to get here. And they're wispy and transparent, and so I thought that, oh dear, well, fortunately I have another one of those cut as well. So see if I can do this a little bit more gently this time. Okay, and now back with the tempting turquoise to add a little bit of that turquoise color to the ends of the wings, and I thought that would be interesting on the body itself. Okay, I'm not going to tempt fate anymore. I think that's just fine, and I'll set that aside. Now, I'm going to use my stamp, which I have mounted with the dragonfly here, and I'm going to use a bit of the tempting turquoise here. And now this stamp is not as big as the other cutout, but that's okay because I just want ever so slightly a hint of the pattern. Maybe a little bit more of a hint than that. There we go. And I want a hint of that in all of the places that I put the faint mark down. There we go. And once over here, I think like that, and it's perfect that it doesn't match it exactly, because that's not the objective. Okay, and then down here in the corner, what I thought I would do is put one more dragonfly, but I don't want to do it in the tempting turquoise. This time I want to do it in the Bermuda Bay and see what kind of a contrast we get. And I want most of a dragonfly image down here in this corner. And there we go. It just gives the impression of being a little bit lighter than the others. Okay, So now what I'm going to do is it takes for a long time for the ink to actually dry on the butterfly. Oh, let's see. I need to do one more bit of stamping now that I think about it, and that is on the inside of my card. So let me grab my card base here. And what I did was I used my sponge that had a little bit of the Tempting Turquoise on it. And let's see, I'm going to throw that one away. And I just sponged this area down here in the corner with a little of that Tempting Turquoise. And then I put my Dragonfly first down in green right here, Pear Pizzazz, and then I used the Tempting Turquoise and I went right over the top. And got kind of a double image there of the green and the blue. And that's my decoration for the inside of the card. Okay. I think that's it for the inks, but I'm going to put them away even if it's temporarily, so I don't get ink on anything I don't want. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is thoroughly dry with my heat tool this panel. I think that's now completely dry, and isn't that pretty just the way it is? And then I'm going to lay this Dragonfly across here, and I'm using a little bit of the ribbon from Celebration, the Bermuda Bay thin ribbon. Okay, here's my ribbon, and here is my glimmer panel. And so the next thing I'm going to do is adhere this panel to the glimmer paper, and I'm doing that with glue dots. It's very difficult to get much of anything to stick to glimmer paper. So I'll be using my glue dots to stick down the panel. There, my glue dots are down. And now I want to add my ribbon. And I need a couple of pieces of ribbon that are enough to cover the front of the card. And I put these pieces of ribbon on after I put a little bit of glue on them here. Right down here towards the bottom. This also helps to hold my vellum in place. And then I secured these around the back of the glimmer paper here. All right, so there's one. And I spread them apart just a bit. About 1/8 in between. And then again, secured these on the back side of the glimmer paper. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and take my piece of scrap white and put my sentiment down, and I did that in Bermuda Bay ink. And let me first just cut the small piece And I think, if I remember right, this piece is 2 inches by about a 1/2 inch. Okay, so there is my sentiment piece. And okay, so I'm going to grab my Bermuda Bay ink here, and I'm going to put this sentiment on here. And I'll use my grid paper to help me get this straight. Now that wasn't very good. Let me try that again. There we go. That's much better. All right. Now what I did was, so I used my green sponge here to kind of color in across the whole piece. And then I used the turquoise piece to just go around the edges, because this was too stark white for me as I got ready to put this piece together. And so here we go. I've got my Celebrate, and I raised that on some mini dimensionals and put it across the ribbon here. Okay, now then, the next thing I'm going to do is put my dragonfly here, and I'm going to angle it a little bit more than I did on this first card, filling up the card a bit more. And I think I'm going to like that a lot better. Now, I stuck this particular item, this dragonfly, down with some glue dots. On the tail, I just put the glue dots kind of in half and put the rolled up glue dots along the tail here. I'll show you exactly what I was doing there. You just take one end of the glue dot and kind of fold it over on itself. And you keep doing that until you get something that looks like a little sausage. And then you can put your glue dot down in a pretty narrow place. Now, there was a couple other places that it made sense to use a glue dot. And again, I'm going to fold these in at least in half. And there's kind of a wide space right here between the two wings that kind of works on both sides. So again, folding this one over on itself a bit to get about half of one, and then putting it in place right here. Okay, then it's a matter of getting my glue dot or my dragonfly down where I want him. And I think right in there is just about right. And it's fine with me that the little bits of the wings stick up. I think that's just fine. Now then, I did use my Wink of Stella brush all over this dragonfly that we used as a, we used it like a stencil, and then putting all of that color on it, it came out just a beautiful color. And I was very happy to have this already colored and ready to go to add to my card. So quite a bit of Wink of Stella. And then I'm doing exactly the same thing, using some glue dots on the back of this dragonfly to attach. And I'm not going to attach it directly over the other one. I'm going to offset it just a little bit. And Wow, I don't know if you can hear that, but we're having what sounds like a thunderstorm outside. It was a beautiful day earlier today, but in Colorado, the weather can change in a flash. People say here that if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes because it's probably going to change. So again, I'm putting glue dots down in basically the same places that I did on the Vellum Dragonfly. And then I'm going to offset this dragonfly just a bit so that you see the vellum one underneath it. And there we have our dragonfly down on our card. And I like the placement of this whole thing a lot better than I did on this one. And I moved the stamping in a little bit more, and I think this one is much more pleasing to the eye. Okay, the next thing I did, was I used these glitter enamel dots, and I placed a couple of these around on my card. All right, now then, that panel is ready to go on our card front. And move these out of the way. And this is going to go on and have just a slight border on this card. And I'm going to put my snail on this card. And the border on this is really not even 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to set this down so that it's got just a tiny border all the way around. And there we go. Isn't that just pretty? I love it. And so that is the card project for today. I want to thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today and joining me. And I do think I like this card much better. It fills up the card so much more than this one did. But I learn as I go, and I think this is a lovely card, but I definitely like this one better. So that is the project for the day. And all of this can be purchased. In fact, all of this, with the exception of this ribbon here and the glimmer paper, from Celebration, everything else is in the annual catalog. And so again, thanks for joining me today. The prize draw for the month is a set of Brusho crystals and a set of aqua painters. And so if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. And through the end of the month, while Celebration is going on, the join offer from Stampin' Up! Is $125 worth of product for $99 plus 2 additional free stamp sets. So it's quite a good bargain to join Stampin' Up! Now. That's it for me today. I'll be back with more projects and more cards. Bye.